We're recording now. Mhm. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Welcome to the BuyIntoBmore webinar on the fixed pricing program and the Charm City Roots programs. My name is Kate Edwards. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Development Division at DHCD. That's the Department of Housing and Community Development. I am joined today by Tamara Woods, who is our Assistant Commissioner for Land Management and Transactions, and Brian Lassan, who is our Public Information Officer, and also Rochelle Celestin, who is in the chat and will be able to answer questions in the chat. Also, Rochelle has posted a link in the chat where you can, it's a link to a form where you could ask additional questions. So if there's questions that we're not able to get to during the webinar itself, you can fill out questions on that web form and we'll be posting answers to questions that we receive. We are recording this webinar and we're going to make that available on our website. So if there's anybody that you know of that's not able to join us today, they will have an opportunity to view this webinar on our website. I am going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. And we will, at the end of the presentation, we'll have a question and answer period. So we'll be, as much as we can, answering questions in the chat during the presentation. And then at the end, we will call on people and allow people to unmute to ask questions as well at the end. And we'll answer as many questions as we can before the hour is up. And any questions that we don't get to, we will be posting answers to those, and you can fill them out, as I mentioned, in that form that Rochelle posted a link to in the chat. So today, our agenda, we're going to talk about the program launch schedule for the fixed pricing program and Charm City Roots. We're going to give you a little bit of information of the purpose of this program, some of the background and the goals, and a little summary of the overall program and policy, the fixed pricing policy. Some information on what the different pricing criteria and levels are, and then an overview of the different processes and procedures related to this program. So starting with the launch schedule. So this program was first approved, the policy was approved at the end of March 20th. I believe, or 22nd. I think it was March 20th, yes. Approved on March 20th. But we had an official launch for what we're calling phase 1, started on April 1st. And so between the period of April 1st and June 30th, we have a priority period for Baltimore City residents who want to purchase properties as their own primary residence that they plan to live in. So that is what we're calling phase 1. So applications submitted during this time, we're only accepting applications for people who fit into that category. They are Baltimore City resident and they want to purchase the property as their primary residence. And people within that category do qualify to purchase properties for $1. And then in phase 2, we started on April 15th, we started the Charm City Roots program. So this is a program that's kind of an offshoot of the fixed pricing program. And it's really focused on helping people who are interested in different properties within the city because of a different, some kind of emotional connection to the property, familial connection to the property, or they live near the property, or they have other kind of legacy ties to the property. So we're allowing people to submit information about the property, the address, and what their connection is to the property into this portal. And that'll give us an opportunity to evaluate the properties and determine whether or not it's a property that we are able to acquire. And if we are able to acquire the property, we'll work with the individual that submits that information to help them to prepare for potentially purchasing the property once we've completed acquisition. Through this program, acquisition can take over a year, so it's not an immediate program. It's a program where we're getting this information ahead of time and we're going to be able to work with that person, but the actual property won't be available for some time in the future. And then phase 3 is when the fixed pricing program is open to all applicants. So that starts on July 1st. And that means at that time, anybody who's interested in purchasing properties under the fixed pricing program can begin submitting applications. And so that will go on from there. That just starts on July 1st, and that's open for all applicants. And any applications that we receive prior to that July 1st date that do not fit within the phase 1, those they'll get a notice to let them know that they don't qualify under phase 1 and that their application will not be processed until after that July 1st, and that will not hold the property. The property will be available for people who qualify under phase 1 to put in a bid on the property. So the fixed pricing program, the purpose of the fixed pricing program is really intended to support community-led development by making the BuyIntoBmore process more transparent, streamlined, and allow equitable access to city-owned property. It's meant to align with our current community-led development efforts, and that's really focusing on development without displacement and seeking to create mixed income neighborhoods that are thriving and affordable throughout the city. This is just some background. Our division, the development division, acquires and manages vacant properties for the city. We strive to make these properties available to be returned to productive use through different programs for disposition of properties. And the fixed pricing policy will allow certain city-owned properties, and this is specifically vacant buildings and lots in specific housing market topologies, to be sold for a fixed price. It's different levels of pricing dependent on the purchaser. And our goal, as I said before, is to increase transparency and really to streamline our disposition process. So our goal is to support whole block and whole community redevelopment outcomes, to convert qualified vacant buildings and lots to productive use, and to stabilize and strengthen owners' investment in their communities, and to improve neighborhood character and attractiveness, and also to increase property tax revenue for Baltimore City. So this just kind of gives you a summary of the program itself. This program only applies to properties that are currently listed as available, well, currently listed or will be listed as available for sale on the city's BuyIntoBmore site under the fixed pricing program. So there's city-owned properties that are not listed on BuyIntoBmore. Those properties do not qualify for the fixed pricing program. And there's also properties that may be listed on BuyIntoBmore under different programs, like our open bid program, or they're available for adopt-a-lots, a variety of different things that we do through that site. And those programs, if they're not listed as under the fixed pricing program, they're not available for the fixed price. It applies only to properties that are located within Baltimore City's housing market typology categories E through J. So on our website and within our resources, and you can also find it on the planning department's website, there is a link to a map that includes the housing market topology. So you can see exactly where the categories E through J are. But that is a categorization that has to do with the level of vacancy in a neighborhood, the demographics of the neighborhood, the current housing values in a neighborhood. And so we're using those categories to determine where this program applies. Additionally, that is where most of the vacant properties are in the city and where the majority of Baltimore City housing departments inventory is. It is limited to up to 12 properties per application. So applicants can apply for additional properties as they obtain use and occupancy permits on previous purchases, but they can't exceed 12 properties at any given time. And all vacant sales must be for redevelopment for residential mixed use that includes residential or green space. So this program is not for commercial properties unless it's like mixed use that includes residential and commercial, but it's not for straight commercial properties. And as I mentioned before, we're giving priority to Baltimore City residents during this period right now, the 90-day period. And the program does not limit the sale of city-owned properties to only the fixed pricing program. We are still using the other methods that we use to dispose of properties, which include requests for proposals, requests for qualification, bundle sales. And so all of these programs will still be used. The fixed pricing program is just an additional tool to help streamline the process for those specific properties. So this slide gives you an overview of the pricing information and criteria. So there is different pricing depending on the type of property it is and who the purchaser is. So these are all for vacant buildings. So for-profit developers or nonprofits that are larger nonprofits that have 51 or more employees, they can purchase vacant buildings at $3,000 per property. For 501c3 nonprofits that have 50 or less employees, they can purchase properties for $1,000 per property. For our community land trusts, they can purchase vacant buildings for $1. Now, these entities must be registered affordable housing land trust, registered with the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxations. And they have to be in compliance with the state's affordable housing land trust laws, which you can find in section 14 of the annotated code of the Maryland Real Property article. So you have to specifically be a registered affordable housing land trust to get properties at that dollar price point, unless you are a prospective homeowner, and that's somebody who was wanting to purchase a property as their primary residence. And in that case, if you want to purchase as your primary residence, you can purchase a property for $1. That is limited to one property per person, because you can only live in one property as your primary residence. You can't have multiple primary residents. And you have to live in that property for 5 years after the issuance of the use and occupancy permit. So you have 1 year to get your use and occupancy permit, and then you live in the property for 5 years. If you move before that 5 years is up, then you'll pay prorated portion of what you would have paid as a for-profit developer, which is the $3,000. And then this is the pricing structure for vacant lots. So again, if you're a larger nonprofit or a for-profit developer, you pay $1,000 for a vacant lot. For a small nonprofit, 50 employees or less, you pay $500 per lot. Community land trusts pay $1 per lot, and homeowners pay $1 per lot. And for lot purchases, this is also for new construction of residential use, mixed use, or green space. And then we have some additional details to all of this. So if a property is assessed for less than the fixed price, then the property will be sold at the assessed value. So if you find a property and it's actually assessed at only $2,000 and you're a for-profit, normally your price under fixed pricing would be $3,000, but since it's assessed at $2,000, you would get that property for $2,000. For homeowner vacant building purchases, as I mentioned before, if the property is sold within the 6-year period, the original purchaser will be required to pay a prorated portion of $3,000, which is going to be based on the year that the property is sold. And we will still require valuations or appraisals for commercial sites, RFP sites, stable and competitive neighborhoods. So those are in our A through D housing market topologies, and for assemblages over 12 properties. And for properties that are assessed for $100,000 or more, they will require additional review and valuation. Those properties will not qualify under this program unless they're determined to be actually at a lower value than that. This just kind of gives more details of what I just said. And then if a properties that have side yards as a proposed use, so this is where an owner wants to purchase a property that is adjacent to their property. They have to be a homeowner that wants to purchase the adjacent property. They can actually do that in our typologies A through J as so that's all of the housing market typologies. So that's not limited to a certain area. So anybody who wants to purchase a vacant side yard, they can do that as long as they are the owner of the adjacent property and it's their primary residency. And so this gives a little bit of information on the applicant criteria. So while you're able to get the property at these lower prices, you do have to have funding available to rehab the property. So a lot of these properties are properties that have been vacant for quite a long time. They do require a great deal of renovation. These are generally gut rehabs. We require that you have at least $90,000 available for the renovation. This can be through either you have that money available in a bank account, or you have financing for that and you have a letter from a bank stating that they are willing to finance you for that. You cannot own vacant building inventory that's older than 2 years. You cannot own vacant building inventory that's less than 2 years that doesn't have any recent or open active permits. The applicant cannot have any open or pending legal cases that might result in their inability to complete the project. So anything like that would have to be cleared up before they could purchase. The applicant does not have any open federal or state liens, and the applicant does not have any open federal or state judgments. So once we receive an application, it's going to have to go through the vetting process that's going to look at whether or not they have proof of financing, and then all of these other reviews where we're looking to make sure that they meet this criteria prior to making a final decision. And so this gives a little bit more information on the side yard applicant criteria. It's basically the same criteria I mentioned before, but you also have to be the owner occupant of the adjacent property. So like I said before, the adjacent property, you have to own it and you have to have, it has to be your primary residency, and you have to have a valid use and occupancy permit on that adjacent property. So for the application, we have a user-friendly application. It's on our website. It's on the BuyIntoBmore website where you can apply for properties. And you'll have to give, different information about the address of the property that you're looking for. You can actually go onto the BuyIntoBmore site. You'll select a property that has to be listed under that fixed pricing program, and then it'll guide you through the application process. And you'll identify whether or not you're a for-profit developer, a nonprofit, or a home owner. And you'll give information about other homes that you own, whether or not you have outstanding liens or taxes, and how you'll fund the rehab and what your plan is. So we ask you to give us this information, but we will also be doing that vetting process. So we're not solely depending on the information that's put into that application. We do run a check and make sure that you qualify under the program. Regardless of what you put in the application, we will check and make sure and verify that that is accurate information. And we do really want to make sure that people have actual financing information. We've had a lot of applications where people are submitting blank documents or submitting erroneous information or just random pictures, things like that. If we get anything like that, it's not going to save that property for you at all. We will just reject your application. So you have to actually provide the financing information. Please do not submit an application that does not include your actual financing information. And so this is talking about the award schedule. We're accepting applications on a rolling basis. We will be making award or rejection decisions. Our goal is to render those decisions within 2 weeks of receipt of an application. And properties will be awarded once an applicant has successfully passed the vetting process. If an applicant is unable to pass the vetting process, they'll be given 5 business days to remedy whatever the issue is with their application. And if they're unable to remedy the issue, then the property will be put back onto the BuyIntoBmore site for another applicant to bid on. So once we receive an application, we do take that property down from our website. We review the application, and if it's not awarded, it gets put back up. If it is awarded, then we move forward with the sale. And so once we've awarded, the department will prepare the sale for the Board of Estimates. Part of this program is that the Board of Estimates is going to maintain a standing recurring item on their agenda that will be specifically for these fixed pricing policy dispositions. This has really helped to streamline the process. Prior to this, we submitted each individual sale to the Board of Estimates. And now we're able to do that in a kind of a bulk submission process. And so we plan to prepare, once we've gotten Board of Estimates approval, we plan to prepare the property for settlement within 45 days of the approval. So anybody who's planning to purchase a property has to be ready with their financing, ready to go, and working with their title company and all of that so that they can close within that time frame. And so one other point is that although, again, the price is set at those set levels, you still are responsible for your closing costs, title costs, all of that stuff is still assessed, and that's on top of the sales price. So you pay $1 for the property, but you do have to pay any title and closing costs. And now I'm going to hand it over to Tamara, who's going to talk about some things that you need to take into consideration when you're looking at purchasing property.
Sorry, still on mute. Thank you, Kate. We're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about what is your proposal, things to consider around that, getting that expert assistance. These are not in the best of shape. And as Kate mentioned, they will take quite a bit of money to rehab. Or if you're doing new construction. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and resources. So next slide. So about your proposal, what are you thinking you would like to do? So under the policy, you can do residential, you can do mixed use with residential, or you can do it for some open space, which could include side yard or community garden or something like that. So what we advise you to do is really consider what type of project are you looking to do. If you're a primary resident homeowner application, then we know that. But if you're coming in as a developer, then you have to really kind of think through these things. What is your proposed use within that cadre of uses that are available under the program? If for some reason you would like to propose something that is not a listed use, then you would have to go under a different program and you would not qualify for the fixed price. Location, we have hundreds of neighborhoods within the city of Baltimore and quite a few in the E through J housing market typology. So we urge you to spend some time, drive around the neighborhoods, get a feel for the neighborhoods, maybe even spend some time at a community association meeting, meet the residents, understand where the property is and what is important to you, either as a place where you're going to live or where you're going to develop. The size of the properties, we have quite a bit of inventory that may include 2-story row house buildings or 3-story row house buildings typically, and some can be quite large. Remember that multifamily is an allowable use once you come in after July 1. So for instance, if you were purchasing a row house building, will have wanted to do rehab for multifamily, that would be a conversion. So that means you have to understand zoning. What is the zoning, the underlying zoning, and what's allowable for that? So what we would urge you to do is spend some time with our zoning code, and in a bit I can drop the link in our chat so everyone understands that. And also reach out to the zoning department in the Benton building, 417 East Fayette Street. And what I would also say, if you want to purchase a property and it looks like it had been multifamily at one point, I would urge you to confirm if it still has a multifamily status on it. because that could actually determine the path of approval that you would need. So you are, you know, responsible for getting all the proper approvals that are needed in order to rehab or build on our lots. So next slide. So expert assistance, what does this mean? You know, working with the city's planning department is critical, especially for new construction projects, or if you're wanting to do something like a conversion, you know, rehab of a row house. They do what are called pre-development meetings. And these are really extremely helpful for projects that are more involved. So for instance, if you as a developer are coming and applying for 6 vacant lots to do new construction, you would have to, one, comply with zoning, building code, any other development reviews. You may trigger stormwater management, erosion sediment control. So the projects can become more complex. So we urge you, if this is something that you are wanting to do, again, visit with the planning department. Also, one of the things that we have on our BuyIntoBmore site, when you're checking out the site and looking on properties, we have the ability for you to request an inspection right of entry. So it might be helpful for you to walk through the properties with your general contractor or a structural engineer or someone that may help you understand and better evaluate the cost of rehab to make sure that what you're preparing to do would fit in your budget. And I believe the inspection right of entry is a cost of $20. And you can always add that to your cart at the same time that you're, you know, putting in for the property. And you have the ability to have that for 3 days, and we can work with you to schedule entry. The one thing with the inspection right of entry, you are responsible for taking the boards off, and when you're finished, for putting the boards back on. There are special screws and things like that. So again, while this is available for you to do, and we do recommend that you know, visit the properties if that you can, know that they are in a condition that would render you to make sure that you can be safe under those conditions. So think about that as well. I'm working with a licensed contractor. So this is critical. In order to get your use and occupancy permit, you have to have legal permits. You have to have legal contractors. You have to do inspections. So this is really very critical that you have a licensed contractor. There is a special process if you're an out-of-state contractor. If you need to get registered within the state of Maryland, you can go to the State Department of Assessment and Taxation and register your business. Once you've done that, then you would go to the circuit court clerk's office and get your out-of-state contractor's license. And after you have that and you have your photo ID, then you can come to DHCD's portal and actually go into the permit system to become registered to do business. So don't fear if you're not, you know, licensed in the state of Maryland. There is a process for you to be welcome to do work within the state. Next slide.
Yeah, before we go to the next slide, I just want to stress something to everybody. Do not go into or enter any property without an inspection right of entry. So we do encourage you to visit the site, and we want you to get an inspection right of entry, but it is illegal to enter any property without that inspection right of entry. So do not go to the property and try and enter it without getting that inspection right of entry. You can do a drive-by, you can look at it, you can use tools online to look at it, Google Earth, all of that stuff, but do not enter a property. They're not safe to enter, and it's not legal to enter without the inspection right of entry. So just want to stress that.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, next slide.
So sure, resources. That was a great segue into our resources. We have Code Map, which is available on our website, and the site is listed there. And maybe Rochelle, you can even drop them in the chat. But this is a tool that where you can look at the different neighborhoods. You can enter the property address. It has different layers that show where there are vacant building notices, which properties are city owned, which ones are owned by the housing authority, which ones may have renters in them versus home ownership. There are lots of different layers that you can pull up to help you kind of paint a picture of some of what might be going on in the neighborhood. It doesn't tell you everything, but it helps you at least get a little bit of insight into the nature of who owns on the block. And you can link there to your SDAT information. You can also see on our website where permits have been pulled. And so that's something on DHCD's website where there's an existing permit search. The BuyIntoBmore website is the portal by which you would apply for these properties. So you would click the fixed pricing program tab, but we also have other programs that are listed there as well, which is our open bid process, any RFPs that we may have out at the time. We don't have any out right now. And just our overall website has just a plethora of information on it. Our DHCD website, we also have several divisions that includes permits and litigation, housing and home ownership, where there might be ways to assist you. We have a project finance team within the development division where there are different grant programs for developer incentives. So all of these things are within our DHCD website. So again, we would urge you to just really spend some time and click on all the different things, because we are a large agency that moves a lot of projects, but we also have a lot of resources that will be helpful for you. And as Kate mentioned earlier, Google, spend some time, looking at all the, walking up and down the street, virtually walking up and down the street, and looking at aerials and seeing what you can tell from the condition of the property. Is there a roof on the property? You can often tell that, and sometimes, and we'll be quite frank, when you're looking at street view, if there are no windows on the upper floors, you can tell sometimes if there's no roof because it's daylight coming through. Knowing the community, I mentioned this earlier, we are a city of neighborhoods, and we strongly encourage community-led work. And so we want people that are coming to, live in the neighborhoods to become part of the neighborhoods. And we also want our development partners to become familiar with those in the neighborhood, spend some time again with community associations, and we can get you that information. The Department of Planning holds a database for community associations, and we have community planners in the Department of Planning. And DHCD, we have neighborhood development officers, all of which can help you connect to what's going on. And another resource is Live Baltimore. They actually have a fabulous website that gives little snippets about neighborhoods around town. So you can use all of these things again to help paint that picture. Next slide. So after the award, what happens? Kate talked a lot about, applying and kind of moving through the evaluation. But once you get the property, say you're successful, what does that mean? We will have you sign what's called a land disposition agreement. That's your contract. That is what you're committing to. This particular property, it outlines that. What is the address of the property? It gives you the timeline. We've said that you have 12 months to complete this. That's outlined in the contract. We also outlined that you have, I think it's 90 days to begin pulling your permits. And so we are tracking these different things. If you are using outside fund sources, including grants, work with that program to make sure those funds are available at closing. If those funds are not available, then either your closing will get postponed, or maybe you won't be able to move forward with the project. So those are things that you want to make sure that any fund sources that you are using are available at closing. Choosing your title company. Kate mentioned that you are responsible for paying closing costs. So you will have to work with a title company. You are free to select whichever title company you're comfortable with. One on your own, or the city actually has a list of approved title companies. So you're welcome to use one that we've already approved. And working with your title company to understand your estimated closing costs. In this case, is very much like a regular real estate deal. So you want to have that conversation and understand what it is you need to bring to the table in order to close successfully. So once it's yours, again, you have the 12 months to complete the job. If for some reason you need to go beyond the 12 months, we do as an agency have the latitude to extend your LDA. So if there's some unforeseen circumstances in month 10, but you've already shown substantial progress, then we can work with you to give you that extension. Our goal is to make sure that everybody is successful. We also understand that some of the larger new construction projects will take longer than 12 months. But again, we want to make sure that within that 12 months, if you cannot complete it, that you are showing substantial movement towards completion. We will not give an extension if you have not started, and there's no reason why you have not started. So this kind of goes back to what Kate mentioned in the beginning, that we are not looking to award properties to people that have a high amount of vacant properties in their inventory. Our goal is to make sure all of these are getting rehabbed and are new construction, but they're moving to become viable to our tax rolls. Again, meeting with the Baltimore City Permits Office to determine property registration and permit needs. This is critical. We are talking about properties that have vacant building notices on them or are vacant lots. And so once you actually acquire the property from us, you are required to register that property. And I believe it's within 10 days that you have to register that. So basically you're becoming the new owner and you're taking responsibility for that property. So again, you will want to do your due diligence to make sure you're registering your property. You're understanding, you know, any laws that you need to adhere to, any development approvals that you need, and your permits. What does it take to get a permit in the city of Baltimore? And, you know, depends again, if you're doing rehab versus new construction, they're more involved and may take a different type of review. So spend some time understanding our permitting process, especially if it's new to you, if you've never worked in the city of Baltimore before. Property will be monitored for LDA compliance until the UNO is obtained. So we do have a compliance team that does track, you know, the progress being made on our awarded properties. So if you are not moving, one, we're tracking the permit work that's happening. But if you're not moving, we will do written outreach to you, just reminders, you know, of your commitment that you've made to rehab this property and checking to see if you're making that movement. If for some reason we have to go to more stringent compliance, then we have the ability to revert and take the properties back. That is not something that we want to do. The whole purpose of the program is to get the properties out, rehabbed and viable. But we also don't want to have a situation where people are holding the properties and they become a blight or a different type of blight on the neighborhood. And so we are going to make sure and monitor through our compliance team that you're holding up the first bullet, you're reviewing and signing the contract, you're holding up your end of that bargain of that contract. So with that, I think we have a couple more slides. So turn it back over to Kate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so finally, this is just to go a little bit more into that Charm City Roots program that I mentioned at the top of the presentation, which is our phase 2. And so this opened on April 15th. And this is where you're able to express your interest in a property that has to be a vacant property and it's not currently a city-owned property. So this is to identify properties that aren't currently city-owned, but they're vacant and they're properties that you or you know, a family member have a connection to and want to potentially purchase for your own primary residence because of this connection that you have to the property. So we will evaluate that property. You can search through the eligible properties, which are on our BuyIntoBmore site, and that's basically going to be all of the vacant properties that are not city-owned that will be eligible. You'll be able to add that property to your cart and you select Charm City Roots, and then you click apply and you will fill out the online form, which providing details about your connection to the property. Once we receive that, we'll begin reviewing the application, and we're going to kind of do an initial preliminary property eligibility review. And then we will determine whether or not we're able to acquire the property, whether or not it's feasible. And if it is, then we'll move forward towards working with the individual. We'll let them know that this is a property that is feasible for our acquisition, and we'll work with them to prepare them for that future home ownership. So we have different financial counseling, home buyer education, and just kind of navigating the home buying process that we'll be able to work with somebody on over that period of time that it takes us to acquire the property. So we have different methods for acquiring properties. The quickest one is in rem foreclosure, and that can be done within a short period of time, 6 to 9 months, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, just because we have such volume of requests for acquisition. And then we have other methods that will take up to a year to acquire properties. And so even with the in rem, even though it's a shorter process, because of the just volume of properties that we're trying to acquire through in rem, those still are going to take at least a year. So generally, if you're putting something into Charm City Roots, you're likely looking at a year or more before we will have that property in our inventory available for you to purchase. And in that period of time, we will be able to work with the person that is interested and make sure that they are prepared for purchasing that property once we've acquired it. And then this just gives you a little information about the different outreach efforts. We have done these 2 webinars. We have our e-blast for DHCD. If you don't already get the e-blast, please sign up on our website to receive the e-blast. You'll get a lot of good information about the different programs we have and different items that we're sharing information on. You can follow us on social media. We're on all the different platforms. And we're also going to be putting out different flyers and kind of door knockers so that people can get this information in targeted neighborhoods. If you have a community association and you're interested in getting some flyers to take to a meeting or anything like that, let us know and we can provide flyers. And that completes the presentation part of this webinar, and we're going to take questions, and I think we can go till at least a little after 7:05, since we started after 6, and we'll take questions, and Brian is going to help us monitor people, so please raise your hand if you want to ask a question, and then Brian will tell you when it's your turn to unmute. And remember that you can still put your questions in the chat or in that link that Rochelle posted at the beginning of the meeting. There should be a link where you can submit questions in case we don't get to your question during this period.
All right, wonderful. We're going to get started. The first hand that I see raised is Sandy K. Could you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having this webinar. I'm happy that I've stumbled on this and I'm here. But my question is, I think someone already probably inquired, but if there's so many people applying online for, like, say, this one property, what is the criteria? How do you determine who gets the property? If someone or 2-3 people have everything that you're asking for, all the documentations, and they're ready to move forward, how are you determining that?
Yeah, so as people apply for properties, once you've applied for a property, the property will be taken down off the website so that we can review that application. If that individual passes the vetting process and has the financing needed to purchase the property and to rehab the property, then that would be the application that would be selected. If that individual that or entity that's submitted is not eligible and not able to move forward, then we would let them know, we would reject that application, and then the property would go back onto the BuyIntoBmore website, and then another individual can apply. So it's basically, we review the applications as they're submitted, and once one finishes the vetting process and is successful, then that's the one that will be selected.
Okay, we're going to go to the next person whose hand is up. It's Channing McIntosh. could you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Here's my question that I do have. So I know you have to have a permit to be able to own the specific property that you may be approved for owning after purchasing. Where do we go specifically in Baltimore to be able to obtain that permit?
So you can get permits. We have a permits office. There's a one-stop shop in the, we call it the Benton Building, but it's 417 East Fayette Street in Baltimore. That is where people can apply for permits. I believe you can also apply online. And there's currently an effort to upgrade that permit system, but you can either apply online or you can come to the one-stop shop and apply for permits.
And I just put the link in the chat.
Thank you. I mean, the link went by extremely quick. Would I be able to, Tamara, would I be able to provide you with my email address so you can send it to me specifically, and this way I could click on it and move forward?
So, I mean, if you would like to send separately in the chat to Rochelle, I think you can send a message or email address, but the link is also in the chat on this meeting, and you could click on the link there as well.
If you're able to open the chat, the link will still be there. I know you only saw it flash on your screen for a short period of time, but it will still be in the chat. But if you don't see it there, then put your email address in the chat and we'll get it to you. You can also get to it through our website. It's on the DHCD website. You would go to the website and there's a section that has permits, and that's where you would be able to find that.
All right, we're gonna move to the next person. I see Kiera Hicks. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, hello everyone. My question is this. If I was to purchase a 3-story unit, and I wanted to live in one of the units, could I do that now, or would I have to wait until January?
You have to wait until July.
I mean, I'm sorry, July, I apologize, July.
Yeah, so right now, this is for primary residence, and it has to be, it's basically single family primary residence. So you're planning to occupy the entire unit. After July 1st, you can apply for a property that would include other units.
Would the rates change for that, or it still would be the dollar?
In that case, you would be paying the rate for either for-profit or nonprofit. So it'd be $1,000 or $3,000.
1,000 or 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that listing, where would I find that listing at?
It's in the presentation we just gave, which is going to be posted online on our website. Also, if you look up the fixed pricing program, we have that information available online on the page that gives information about fixed pricing. But basically, if you're a for-profit developer, it's $3,000, or a nonprofit that's larger than 50 employees, that's $3,000. If you're a nonprofit, a small nonprofit, for a small nonprofit, it's $1,000. If you're a community land trust, it's $1. You have to be a registered Maryland Affordable Housing Land Trust to get that $1 price point. And if you're a prospective homeowner who wants to purchase as only their primary residence, that's the $1 price point. Oh, and Rochelle just put it in the chat as well, the link to where you can find that pricing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go to Tenning Niang. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
My question is pertaining to the searching of the available properties under phase 3.
I'm sorry, it sounds like you're far from your mic. Could you get closer, or I'm not sure, but we're having trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm interested in the phase 3 and to the developers portion of the program for the $3,000. And when I was looking on the BuyInBmore website, I was just coming across vacant lots, adopt a lots. Everything that I saw was pretty much a lot.
Right.
And most of the homes were Charm City. Now,
Yes.
the Charm City do, let's say, stay on the market and they're not taken up in a certain period of time, will then they flow into other programs or no?
So the Charm City Roots properties, the ones that say eligible for Charm City Roots, those are actually privately owned vacant properties. So those are properties that people are identifying for us that they would like us to try and acquire. So those are not available for purchase right away. So that's a different program. You're not buying immediately through the Charm City Roots program. So the reason that so many properties are not showing as available right now is because we got this influx of applications, and we have to review the applications, and then we will post them again once we get through that review period, because a lot of the applications that we're receiving right now because of all this increased interest are not actually applications that are complete. And so they're either don't complete, they don't have all the financing information. So a lot of those are ending up getting rejected, and then the properties are being reposted. So unfortunately, you just have to kind of keep checking back, and new properties will become available.
So just keep checking simultaneously and then more, because all I'm seeing is lots. I'm like, wait a second here. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked today. I know when I looked a couple days ago, there were still some buildings there, but I don't know if today it's only lots. You do have to make sure that you've got both the structures and the lots showing. But if there are no buildings at all, it's just because we have to clear out those applications, and there'll be more posted.
So I'll just.
I checked a little bit ago and there was about 27 buildings there. So when you go to the BuyIntoBmore site on the right side, that's where you can apply filters. Go underneath city property type and select structure, and that'll whittle down the 360 something that are available now down to the 20 something, if the 27 are still there from 6 o'clock, for you to be able to see just the buildings that you can bid on.
Awesome. Thank you so
Yeah, and sometimes if you're like zoomed in, you might not be seeing all of the buildings. So if you do what Rochelle just told you, that will give you the total number, and then you
I'm
can
sorry, so
navigate to them.
what category did you say under again? Land size, or what was it under?
It's
Structure.
city property type
Got
under
it.
filters, and then select structure.
Got it. Thank you. That was it. Thank you, ladies.
Okay, great.
All right, and we have one last hand raise for ET. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, hi. Thank you for putting this together. I have a question for you. I have reviewed your website about a year ago, and it was fraught with errors. I have also requested to enter a property and found that there was no property, actually. It was vacant land, paid the fee and what have you. So how reliable is this information on your website?
Well, we're always working to make sure that we're updating it and making it as accurate as possible. So it is, I think, pretty reliable, but I don't know what kind of issues you were encountering. Sometimes,
yeah.
I mean, aside from the vacant lot versus vacant building, that's one issue. Go ahead.
Well, there's a structure. It shows there's a structure. You go, you pay the fee to enter the structure, and there's no structure. It's actually empty land. And then there are properties that I personally know are owned by individuals that are showing on your website as structures that are available. So it's, unless the data is accurate and complete, it's very difficult to work with with these programs, because you're spending a lot of time correcting or identifying a property and doing your research and then going and finding out it's absolutely incorrect.
Okay, so generally, we are pulling that information from the tax records and from the property records. We don't have that many, I think, inconsistencies, but they do happen occasionally. We definitely, if you paid to go out to a property and it turns out there's no building there, we would refund that payment. So definitely let us know that. We should also be able to look, you know, there's different tools that we can look at to get that information ahead of time. So we try to avoid that. And I do think that the accurate information is mostly available on our site, but there's going to occasionally be anomalies.
So if we have difficulties such as the ones that I just explained, is there a contact that you can, you know, within your department that can provide the information right away?
Mm-hmm.
You know, a phone number, an email?
Yeah, so we have our general email, which is, Rochelle, can you give the email address? I think it's DHCD Development Info.
It is developmentinfo@baltimorecity.gov. And also, if you have, if you're finding anomalies with the data on the website, you can email me directly, and I'll do a check on our end to see what that error might be and correct it where able, or at least assist you for those kinds of inquiries. Because, like Kate said, that should be the rarity. So if you come across, you know, one of those, feel free to email me directly, and I can try and fix and resolve for you.
Okay, what's your name again? I didn't catch it earlier.
My name is Rochelle.
So
and also, if you drop your information in the chat, then I'll email you and you can let me know what your experience was.
Shall I drop my information in the chat?
In the chat. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, Rochelle, can you put that development info email address in the chat if it's not there already?
Yep, I'll do that right now.
Thanks.
All right, we have one last question, and I believe that will be all that we really have time for. We're going to take Steven Scott. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, I looking in different areas, and there's so many vacant properties that are available. Is there some kind of guys you're working on trying to get these so you guys can sell these properties?
You mean like properties that are not city owned?
Evidently, I guess they're not city owned, because I know there's like 12,000, and there's just so many vacant properties. Thinking, oh my God.
Yeah, there's way more vacant buildings than there are, you know, that are privately owned than there are that are city owned. So this program obviously only applies to the city owned as far as what you can purchase, but that's part of what we were talking about with Charm City Roots. So that's a program to help us identify properties that people are interested in us acquiring. And then we also just constantly identify new properties that we're acquiring. That's a big push from our agency, is to begin acquiring more of these vacant properties so that we can get them back into productive use. Because a lot of the times what happens with the vacant properties that are privately owned is that there's issues with the title that prevent them from being sold, or there's somebody who's passed away and they're stuck in kind of a limbo, or there's just a lot of issues with those vacant privately owned properties. So that's a big part of the work that we're doing, is acquiring those properties so that we will have more inventory and then we'll be able to sell them. But it does take time and money, and we're working on that as an agency to increase our inventory of ones that we own.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that concludes the Q&A portion. I'm going to turn it over to Kate to see if she has any closing comments.
Yeah. So I just want to thank everybody again for joining us, spending your evening with us, and hope that it was helpful and that you learned some new information. And please do reach out. We have that developmentinfo.baltimorecity.gov that's in the chat. Send us an email, or if we didn't get to your question, please fill out that question form that Rochelle put in the chat as well. So thanks again, and thanks for joining us. Have a great night, great evening.
Yes, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
we will be posting the recording.
Yes.